Hey, so today I'm speaking again with Amy Dempster. So earlier this week, I spoke again with Jenny Schultz. So it's just funny that you guys are both returning this week. It's coming back around again. But Amy's been up to some cool and different things in the last year. And I just thought it would be cool, fun for us to hear these different adventures, which include the Amanita mushroom, which is like the red and white mushroom that we think of from fairy tales and stuff. So thank you for coming back on, Amy.
Thank you for having me back. I'm excited to chat again.
So yeah, I think you started mentioning the Amanita maybe in the springtime or in the early summer. Is that when I first started hearing you talk about it? But I otherwise had no experience or awareness of it beforehand. So can you fill us in about that?
I've had it's been in my awareness for a few years, and I have just been looking for it in my normal kind of foraging out in the woods, and I haven't come across it. I still haven't, in fact, come across it on my property or around our area, but I've been looking for it for a couple of years. I had a sense that it was a medicine that my ancient ancestors would have been familiar with. And they were starting to bring it into my awareness kind of probably last summer and fall. And giving me the message like you're gonna get the mushroom back, right? Like it's gonna come back to you. So I just kept thinking, well, I'm gonna find it. And then right around the end of the year, I actually heard um, an interview with Amanita Dreamer, who is somebody who's gotten to be fairly well known for working with this mushroom. She has a YouTube channel and a website full
Yeah.
of informative videos. And so I really heard her talking more about, exactly how to work with the mushroom and how she uses it, and was able to find resources to purchase the mushrooms. And so it was right around the end of last year. I first started working with it. And I did. I probably didn't talk about it for a while because I wanted to kind of have that experience and understand how the mushrooms wanted to work with me, how my body reacted to them, and have a little bit more knowledge about them. And within a pretty short period of time, they really they were in my dreams night after night after night, showing me an image of a ceremony here on our property and telling me like you need to host a ceremony. And so that made me really nervous. When something is still new and you want to feel more familiar with it. And so I reached out to Amanita Dreamer, and it turned out she was hosting ceremonies. And so she was able to come out here and co host a ceremony with me. And that was really how everything kind of got started as far as um, making
Bringing
more
it to
public
your,
offerings.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I know. Cause I mean, it's funny because last year in November, there was a class that I was in, and one of my classmates, it was my teacher coming to teach a class, a theta healing class. And one of the classmates was an artist or is an artist. And the last day of class, she showed up with little pieces of like little tree, like a tree cut ornament type of thing. And she made custom paintings for everybody. And she's like, I don't know, I just made them because she's also an intuitive. And her painting for me was the Amanita.
Oh my
So
gosh.
yeah, I thought that was neat. And then I also, like, after learning about the Amanita, like I looked around my office and I recognized I had it like on every wall at my work, which was just really cool. So it's just kind of always been in the peripheral. So hearing you talk about it and then hearing your interview with Amanita Dreamer was like really interesting to me, you know? And I reached out to my friend who's an herbalist, and she's like, all I know is that it's poison, you know? And I'm like, yeah, but it's not. so so yeah, that was like the beginning of like learning about it, you know, and seeing that it's like another spiritual tool. And it was something that also had gotten a bad rap historically, just like witches, you know, like so yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's another plant that just has had some really bad PR over the years, and I
Right.
think I think because of the power that's held within it, and how strong the medicine really is. But yeah, most people are very nervous about it in general, because every single mushroom book, everything you find online, just tells you stay away.
And if it was consumed, I think, if it's just consumed with raw right from the ground, it can make you sick. Is that why it's got that reputation, or is it okay to take it raw?
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting is that, and I'm not a
Yeah.
fungi expert by any stretch of the imagination, but my general understanding, especially if you're a beginner when it comes to foraging, is you would just never eat a mushroom raw, period. It's just
Mhm.
better not to. Always good to, cook your mushrooms in some way.
Okay.
And so, you could, I guess, potentially eat it raw, but part of what's so different about Amanita is that from other kinds of mushrooms and other mushrooms that you might work with in this way is that the compounds within them are not necessarily consistent from mushroom to mushroom. So you could get a mushroom that has, a really, really high dose of ibotenic acid, which is what causes gastrointestinal distress, and that's
Mhm.
really what's going to happen if not only raw, but also if you dried it and just ate it, you would still potentially have some stomach and intestinal distress. But you would have to eat like a large quantity, like 2 dozen,
Mhm.
fresh mushrooms, probably most likely, to get really sick and end up in the hospital. It would be a large quantity.
And it varies from mushroom to mushroom, just like jalapenos. We had jalapenos the other night, and I was like, "Oh my god, this one's a really spicy one." Where sometimes you can eat jalapeno and it's not a big deal. So it's the same thing with mushrooms. So if you were
Yeah,
gonna like break them up and use them, you have to use. You should. It's recommended to use a variety of them, so you don't um, have one that's too weak or one that's too strong. Just have like a little mixture. So
exactly.
so with the consumption of it and the experience, like what I mean, I know there's like it's a whole huge topic, and if people are interested, they could follow Amanita Dreamer, and her story is amazing. She was like suicidal, and so she just was led to the mushrooms, and she's sure that it was the mushrooms that were calling her, and she took it, and it shifted her perspective on things, and she saw life differently, and she decided to like live, and like that was like for her, it didn't matter if it was toxic because she was already like ready to go. So, but
It's a pretty powerful story of how the medicine worked with her. Absolutely.
yeah, so like what's to gain for people to experiment with this if they know how to find it safely and get the right instruction on how to consume it and stuff? It's like I know that you said that there's a big link with the ancestors. So what happened with you and your ancestors that kind of brought you that awareness? And I didn't get to listen to your episode this week yet, and I want to. I'm sorry I didn't get to listen to it yet.
That's okay. Yeah, I mean, it's so hard. This is part of, I think, what can feel overwhelming or intimidating about the mushroom, or confusing, because it doesn't just do one thing. And it really is, the more that I've worked with it, the more I realize like this would have been a mushroom that you would have found fresh, our ancient ancestors, right? And they would have dried it and it would have been in their, medicine pouch on their belt or whatnot. And it would have been such an easy medicine to carry with you that could do so many different things. And so it's been really interesting in especially in leading the group that I did in the fall, to have a large variety of people, all from different kind of walks of life, or all wanting to work with the mushroom for different ways, because it is fairly adaptogenic. It is fairly, like, I find that the message that I've gotten specifically from it is it helps your body find a harmony, right? And they're kind of fun, if you work with them really shamanically or in your dreams, you'll find they sing along a lot of songs. They're very musical.
Playful, yeah,
What's
singy and
that?
dancy.
Yeah, yeah, they're very fun and funny. But they all, yeah, they love songs. They'll give you songs, they'll put songs in your head. But I think that's because they have this ability to find harmony in your body. And so they're like, everybody's going to have a different result, although there are certain things that kind of they're known for helping with. But um, the way I perceive it is they kind of go into your body and look around for what's out of balance, what's out of harmony, and
Mhm.
help bring those things back into harmony. So, a lot of people say it helps them with their sleep, that they have the best sleep entire life, right? Like finally I'm sleeping again, right? So, but I haven't had that experience particularly. I
A
sleep.
good sleeper. Yeah.
Yeah, like I'm a pretty good sleeper, so I don't think they're like, you've got that. We have other things to work on. So,
Right.
but a lot of people say, they really really help with sleep. A lot of people in the or a handful of people in the group that I just hosted in the fall, we're all working on gut issues, and it was helping them significantly with gut issues, which is so interesting. Considering people are worried that it's going to bother their gut in some way, but
Right.
they actually found it very healing. So there are, a lot of people it helps more with focus. And, if you've got ADD or ADHD, like this is a mushroom that's really, really supportive for that. So there's so many
Yeah.
different things that it can help with. And I think it's actually one of the great reasons that to work with it, because it can kind of gently go in. A lot of times we don't even know what
Hmm.
it is we'd like some help with, right? Or that it's in retrospect you go, oh,
Yeah.
I didn't even realize that I wasn't sleeping that well, and then it was affecting my immune system, or it was affecting my gut health, or it was all of these different things that are it could just be a long list of things, or you're not even fully conscious of what it is. And it's like it lets you kind of see things from a different perspective, and you can kind of stand back and look and say, oh, I can see that now, or I can see
Right.
this pattern that of behavior that I've been doing that I wasn't even conscious of, and now that I see it, it's actually I can deal with it. So
Yeah. It's
so
like a time
many
release. Yeah. Where you look back and go, oh, that's where it kind of fit in, type of a thing.
Right, right. Yeah. And they have a way of just coming in and showing you. It might be through a dream. It might be, I find it both in dreams and in my waking life. And it's really funny because I've had people say, I'll say, oh, the mushroom showed me this. And they're like, well, how did you know it was the mushroom? And I'm like, you can just kind of feel like that's where that information is flowing from. But it's just like, they're mycelium. They're really good at making, networks and connections. And so it's like
Yeah.
they're able to make this little connection that you're like, I never saw that, or I never got that, but now I get it, and now I know what I need to do.
And I don't know if you guided, because I participated in Amy's the fall, what, I don't know what you called it, like the Amanita Experience, right?
Yeah, the Amanita Experience. Yeah.
So like I participated in it, and I wasn't able to attend the live not solstice, the equinox, but I caught it like 3 days later, and I ended up like I could see the mycelium network in my mind, and I kind of saw that as like a parallel overlap of like us and consciousness overall.
Oh, that's cool.
I was just like, whoa, it was cool. So yeah, it's not like you take it to get high kind of a thing. It's just like you take it and kind of notice how it affects you. And like I did feel the first time I did it, I did feel bendy. Like there was something about
Bendy,
like
that's
my
cool.
knees felt bendy.
Yeah.
And I did have that Alice in Wonderland experience when I like laid in bed later, where I was like, whoa, I feel big. I felt bigger. But it wasn't like, like this crazy. I haven't used psilocybin medicinally. I did it in college, but like, but I hadn't had that kind of experience before. So it was kind of interesting to be like, oh wow, this is a this is definitely a result of that. But
Yeah, and
I
it's
did.
so different. I think when people think of mushrooms, they put all the mushrooms in the same category, right? So they
Mhm.
just are either nervous about working with Amanita because they don't want to have,
Yeah.
that a trip, or they are hoping to have an experience like maybe they've had with psilocybin and then they don't and they're disappointed, right? It could go
Right.
kind of either way. And that's why I actually really enjoy Amanita, because it really fits into your day-to-day life much easier. You don't really have to kind of retreat off and then spend weeks processing like what happened. It's like kind of just works its way into your day-to-day life. That's my experience with it. Anyway, but if you're expecting to have like a trip like you would have on psilocybin, that's it's just not how it works. It's not what it
Yeah.
does.
And there's different ways to consume it and use it. And I know that Amanita Dreamer said that when she first pulled it like from the earth, and she was like, well, how do I use you guys? And she kind of heard like how much to use and to boil it for 20 minutes or whatever in like 1 cup of water or whatever it was. So that's the tea version, and then there's like a smoking version, and then there's an oil, and then the yogurt one, which I didn't do.
Yeah.
So, and I know that you guys like liked it, but I was like, I
Yeah.
don't know. I never got that far yet with it. So, what are the different benefits of the different ways to experience it?
Yeah, so what's really interesting about it, so there's two main compounds in Amanita, ibotenic acid and muscimol. There's lots of other compounds, but those are the two main ones. And you can kind of think of it as like the ibotenic acid is gives you more energy, tends to. And the muscimol is the compound that really like takes you off to dreamland so that you can do some of this work in your dreams, or you might just sleep really, really well. And so the ibotenic acid comes on first and is in your body first. Usually it takes about 90 minutes or so. So it's the kind of thing I usually suggest, although as people experiment, they usually find different ways that work for them, but that you would take whatever you're going to take kind of in the evening time, because you're going to have like an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours of energy
Mm-hmm.
potentially. So you can, kind of get things done, or work on a project or something, but then you're going to probably get really, really drowsy. And that's my experience is even if I don't feel like I get a lot of energy from it, I'll hit a point where I'm like, I cannot keep my eyes open. Like I have to
Right.
take myself to bed now. And so those are the kind of two things. So depending on how you prepare the mushroom will give you more or less ibotenic acid or more or less muscimol. And
Mm-hmm.
so on the one end, where you have a lot more ibotenic acid would be to smoke it. So really, you're just taking the dried mushroom and chopping it up. You could blend it with other herbs if you like, or just smoke it by itself. It's going to have again more ibotenic acid on that end because it's just really in its original state.
Mm-hmm.
And each preparation kind of has different benefits. I have found, and I'm not a smoker, that's not something of any kind like that I've really enjoyed, but I actually enjoy smoking the Amanita more than I enjoy the other preparations. But in going through, kind of with the group, I found people kind of fell into, certain categories of like they tried it, they didn't like it, it wasn't for them, but they liked
Mm-hmm.
other preparations, or they thought they wouldn't like it and then they ended up liking it, which is probably more the category I fall into. So
Right.
but yeah, the smoking, same type of thing. Like you're going to get some more energy. There's more ibotenic acid in it. It might help you if you're wanting to focus on something, or like really work on a project or problem solve. That type of thing is more likely going to happen with the smoking. The next thing that's kind of like the in between, the much more adaptogenic and probably, a good place for a lot of people to start is with the tea. Because when you take the dried mushroom and you boil it in water, you're decarboxylizing more of the ibotenic acid. It's not completely gone, but it's taking more out. So it's just kind of the next step
Right.
along. And the tea is probably, I mean, that's like I say, it's like the middle ground, good place to microdose. It lets the mushroom kind of decide what you need. If you're like, I don't know what I need,
And
I don't know
more
what.
is not better, right? Like
Right.
I remember like that being emphasized. It's like, don't just think, oh, I'm gonna have a bigger serving and it'll be more profound. It doesn't necessarily like matter. You could have a little teaspoon and that would be
Yeah.
your serving,
Yeah,
you know.
it's one of the things I think is so cool about it. Like I say, like I think the magic of this mushroom is in smaller doses over a longer period of time, because it
Hmm.
really and like I said, it doesn't, the insights and the healing and some of the things that the mushroom will work with you on doesn't necessarily happen while you're physically ingesting the
Right.
mushroom. It
Right.
just really doesn't. It's so interesting to me. Like I could smoke 3 evenings in a row and feel like nothing has happened,
Right.
or and then the night that I don't smoke, I'll have this like really insightful dream, so
Yeah.
it comes and goes in all kinds of different times. So it's more like once you're connected with the frequency and the energy of the mushroom, then it's just able to work with you
That's
whether you're taking
yeah.
it or not.
Because like the other night, like I was saying before we hit record, like I used the oil to like massage, and I felt it pretty strong. And I was like, I had done the drink the tea like 2 nights before, and before that it was like a week or something before.
Yeah.
And I felt like it was just like familiar and it was already like in me. So it kind of picked up, it was interesting because I was like, this was such a small amount, but I like, I had like that kind of like I napped, you know, and I had
It
this
really helps
whole,
with napping, yes.
yeah, this whole experience in my head that, I didn't write down. But I remember you saying that too, being like, you'll have all these amazing dreams and you wake up and you forget them all. And you're like, oh, but like it still did the work, whatever it needed to do. So,
Yeah, it's so interesting because it is, and my husband says this a lot, that I'll have both experiences. I have some where I really remember the dreams and others where I don't. And in his experience, he's like, it'll be a really good, really interesting dream or a lot of insights. And he's like, and as I'm just waking up, I'm like, I have to remember this, I have to remember this. And then it's like, it's
yeah.
gone. And a lot of people in the group said that that was their experience as well.
Yeah, and I wish I had my journal within reach. I'm pretty sure it's next to my bed upstairs, but I had a journal that I was keeping for our whatever 6 weeks that we did. Or was it 6 weeks?
4 weeks.
4 weeks.
Yeah.
Okay.
A month. Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, it was like the end of August or the beginning of September.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, because I know I had some cool things and I wrote them down, but I should have thought to actually have them within reach now, but I don't. Um, but yeah, it was neat. And in retrospect, also, like I think I had said to you when I was in San Francisco last week, I'm like, oh my God, like I was drawn to San Francisco and I didn't know. I mean, I knew why. My mom grew up in that area. But then leading up to that trip, I learned that we had like layers of ancestors that had history there, which I didn't know in advance.
Wow.
And the whole idea came together probably the nights I was first connecting with the mushroom before I even consumed it. When
Yes.
it was like at my bedside and I was just like, near it,
Yeah.
connecting to it at night and everything. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, and like you said, the ancestral connection thing. So it's just like, it was neat to kind of look back and be like, I think this whole trip happened because I was connecting with the mushroom. It brought me there.
It is really funny. Sometimes you can't connect the dots until afterwards, and then you're like, oh, wait, that was
Yeah.
all the mushroom giving me that information, and I didn't even realize it. It
Yeah.
really is like that. I mean, that's one of the things I just like so much about it because it just, it feels like a frequency thing. And you can just work with it energetically without ingesting it. I found my understanding and my working with it was deeper after
Consuming it.
physically
Yeah.
consuming it. But certainly there's lots of people and I suggest to people like order your mushrooms, get your mushrooms, and then just like sleep with them on your nightstand for a week or so and see what happens. And most people had, really cool either dreams or ideas or,
Yeah.
just things start to come to them before ever ingesting it.
That's really neat. And then so the next level after like down that whole scale that we had seen the picture of the ibotenic acid on one side, muscimol on the other.
Yep.
In between, the middle point was the tea, and then to the right of that was the yogurt or the
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that was made
So
with a what do you call it? Unprocessed, what's it called?
yeah, just using raw milk. I mean,
Raw
you
milk,
could
yeah.
use pasteurized milk, but raw milk has the live cultures in it,
Mhm.
and you're doing what I mean, certainly what our ancestors would
Yeah.
have done, but fermentation, and that fermentation process with the mushroom, or the tea. Basically, you put the tea in with the
Hmm.
raw milk, and depending on the warmth of your house or whether or not you can if you just leave it on your counter, it's basically clabbered milk, which is just one step shy of yogurt. So depending on how you prepare it, you might get a
Right.
couple different types of options. But by the time you get to that preparation, pretty much all of the ibotenic acid is out of the mushroom. And so you're just going straight to muscimol. You're probably going to go right to sleep. In fact, my first experience when I first made it, I just stirred it after it was ready, and then I just like licked the spoon without thinking. I just like licked the spoon and then rinsed it off and put it in the sink. And I went outside to like water plants or something. I don't know, it was like 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and all of a sudden I was like holding the hose and just like falling forward. I was like, could not stay awake. I'm like, I have to go lay down immediately. Like, that's it. So it just kind of shows you on that scale, like you're
Yeah.
saying, how it shifts. And so but the mushroom's going to work with you in all different kind of states. But different people find different preparations work for them better, or they enjoy it better, or it has. It's interesting. You talk about feeling very large, and that's the Alice in Wonder. And in fact, I had a dream about the mushrooms the other night, and I was very tiny.
Oh yeah,
So,
I read that. Yeah.
yeah, so it's like you're either really big or really
Oh yeah,
small.
I think that was my experience. I saw it. I felt like I was the size of an ant. I felt like I was in Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, and I was the size of an ant looking up at a blade of grass, and I was like,
Yeah.
"Wow, that is different."
Yeah, and again, it's like this perspective shift, right? Like puts you in
Hmm.
different perspectives. But I think a lot of people have the large feeling, because one of the things the mushroom is really good at is really helping you understand how to take up space,
Hmm.
really. And I think because a lot of us just have, through years of conditioning, or family we grew up in, or whatever the situation is, we just have the tendency to make ourselves smaller than we are, or not as important, or not to have the confidence. Like, it's really a really, really good mushroom for confidence building, and um, even like bravery. I think it's like that's the word that's coming into my head while I'm thinking about it. Just
Yeah.
feeling like, um, like this is something I can do, and the mushroom's gonna help me. It's gonna be right here, as my friend while I'm doing this scary thing.
And I think that my first experience, I mean, it wasn't even taking it. I think it was just meditating with it. Um, Again, if I could consult my notes, but like I felt like, and I said this in the group, I remember being like, I feel like they were doing the can dance. I'm like, it's so joyful, so
They
joyful and silly
are.
and fun. Yeah. And then I saw your interview with the past life thing. That was really cool. Like I went and watched the rest of it after you recommended it. And that was really fascinating. What was she saying about the Amanita and like historically, or I forget, she had something cool about just their role. Like, was it like,
Yeah. We talked about so many pieces now, but yeah, it was something about, because I think I had asked her, I was like, where did they come from, right? Like,
yeah.
they feel like they don't come from this planet.
And
And so,
she was picking up on how joyful and silly they were.
yeah, yeah.
Just
And
so
just,
mind-boggling. I mean, I think that like we just don't even, or like not we, regular world people don't even think about the consciousness of things, you know?
right,
And
right,
so it's just so wild to think the mushrooms have their own consciousness and they have
right.
their own personality kind of. So,
Yeah, and you just think this was something that people were familiar with and were working with for thousands of years, especially when we talk about, them being labeled as toxic, or I'm like,
mhm,
well, there was like a 4,000-year history of people using them. So
right,
obviously, like, if they had a bad reputation of making people sick, they would have stopped using them,
right,
right? Like,
right.
it wouldn't have worked with them. So this is really interesting. One of the things they've showed me over the time as well is that, yeah, so many of our ancestral connections were familiar with this medicine, and the mushroom itself helps make that connection back to the ancestors. And what they were showing me was, when you work with the mushroom, it's like a door can open that has been closed, and so it's like a way for them to come in, almost like through a portal, through the door, to reconnect with us, because now it's like, ooh, we're on that same frequency. We're both familiar with, are connected with this frequency. And that's I did a particular property reading, and the message the ancestors were saying was, we can't get back to these particular ancestors on this property. We can't get back to our current ancestors who are alive today, but when you use the mushroom, you open the door for us to get in, and to reach them. And so,
Cool.
it's kind of it's a cool visual to have, to understand, like, that's how, like, they're traveling on those networks, and using that mycelium as well to reach out and connect with us.
It's so neat. And then like also in your, I guess in your promotions before the September class, linked different things or shared different things about the history of it and the whole like Santa thing. It's just so mind-blowing. Like Santa's in red and white, is like the shaman delivering the treats down the chimney because the snow was so high. So like all of these things like that are so intertwined in our culture, like have that as an origin. And it's just like, what? Like it blew my mind. Like the reindeers dancing, it's because the reindeers were eating it, right? And then like, so,
Reindeer are
or
known
they're
to
not dancing.
love
The people like are
yeah.
feeling like they're flying, and it's because they were feeling the
Yeah.
energy of
Yeah,
the
yeah. They were getting the abotanic acid as well.
yeah, yeah, it's
Yeah.
just so interesting. So like, is there anything about that like that you want to dive in on about like the whole Santa and Christmas thing that you could
Yeah,
explain better than me just now?
yeah, no, I mean, I just think it's really fascinating that when you think about it too, and even if you really look around, even in today, but certainly if you look at vintage holiday things like vintage Christmas cards or ornaments or different things, you'll find the mushroom everywhere. And it does, sometimes we just let these things kind of filter into our psyches without asking, like, why is the
Right.
mushroom connected with Christmas? What do those things have to do with each other? And so if you think about the timing, this is around the time of year, depending on where in the world you are, that the mushrooms are fruiting, like October, November, and then they would have needed some time to dry. And so the theory is that, the shaman would have collected them, the medicine people, and laid them maybe on the evergreen boughs to dry, which,
Decorating the Christmas tree.
very much, yeah, like ornaments on a tree. And that, once they were dry, it was something they would do on winter solstice, which now you're really close to Christmas time. And I'm sure this was, pre Christianity,
Right.
would have been winter solstice. And they would go, especially if you're talking about the northern tribes, Siberian type locations, northern Scandinavia. They're in more, yurt type structures. And so if the snow was high and piled all the way up, you might just be walking right to the top. But that if you think about it, not sure it was a gift or a present, but I also think it was medicine, right? And
Right.
so one of the really interesting things about Amanita is it is super, super, super high in vitamin D, like off the charts vitamin D. And so you think
Oh
about all the
wow.
people that lived in very northern climates without sun or the very little sun in the wintertime, and like why weren't they getting sick? What were they consuming? And so the mushroom would have been one of those things that that
Like a
helped them
supplement. Yeah.
to supplement, even if they just boiled them so that all the kind of active psychoactive constituents were out and just ate the mushrooms, they still would have been getting all that vitamin D. So yeah, the reindeer, of course, are also in that climate and are very familiar, and so a lot of the um, a lot of the shaman apparently in those areas had like red and white type clothing that they wore. And so, yeah, there's a lot of connections back to that. And you used to just start realizing, if you have a Northern European, Eastern European, lineage at all, for sure, your
Yeah.
ancestors would have been familiar with this mushroom.
Yeah. I know we shared the Scandinavian heritage, so we have the same great 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 grandmother or whatever
Yeah, probably.
up the line. So I think it's really nice that you're bringing this and normalizing it to like the world, whoever is, attracted to it. But so you're offering this guided kind of, I don't even know what, just the Amanita experience with the
Mhm.
help of community and your guidance. And you're starting that up again soon because it's going to culminate on the winter solstice, right?
Exactly. So this next one will be starting on December 1st, and there's one more little call after the solstice, just to, as an integration kind of at the end of the experience. So the ceremony on the solstice is kind of what we build up to, and then we have one more call. So it's basically just the month of December. And I find that I think what makes us the most nervous when we're, on the one hand, we have lots of information available to us, right? We can watch a million YouTube videos and read books and do whatever. But when it takes, you have to actually physically make the medicine or, work with it. That's when we get nervous. And so the Amanita experience is really created so that I'm guiding you through and helping you learn the different ways to do it and answering all your questions as you go. So we basically meet on Zoom, but from my kitchen, so you can be in your kitchen once a week. And I show you how to make or work with the mushroom for smoking it and how exactly to smoke it if that's something that a lot of people are not familiar with. how
It
to
was the
smoke.
fun. I found it so fun to be watching you be like, this is a water pipe. And I'm like, that's a bong, you know? But,
Exactly.
but it's like, there was a lot of people that had like zero experience. And it's like, it's good. It was a good service, you know, to explain to
Yeah.
people how to pack a bong.
Right? It's just really like if you've never done it, like,
Yeah, it's
and I mean,
intimidating.
and people are nervous about like, well, where do I go buy one at, or who am I supposed to tell people when I'm gonna smoke it? Yes, go do that. Like, go tell them what you're doing, let them help you. They're gonna like know what it is you need, you know. And so
Right.
just having that, I think that moral support or somebody
Yeah.
to say like, I have this question, but I feel like a newbie and I don't really know. Like, that's the entire point of this. Like,
Right.
ask all the questions and feel like you have a community of people that you're doing it with that also don't know or haven't done it before
Yeah.
or are very familiar with it and are like, yeah, I know exactly how this works and I'll help you. So
And then you have it set up also for that chat, like was it on Signal?
yeah,
So
so we
that
had
was just like a
a
big
group
text
chat,
message. Yeah.
on Signal, which obviously you can participate in or not. You know, some people would rather not have other people's experiences color theirs, and other people would rather have the community. So
Yeah.
it's
Choose
just
your
kind of
own
a
adventure. Yeah.
exactly, and it's a good way to just be able to have a chat, but not be on Facebook and have all of that.
Were
So
you able to draw any conclusions or get any more? I mean, I'm sure you must have just by facilitating it, but like, were you able to get any more better understanding or generalizations about the experience by witnessing the group go through it in September? Like, how did that?
yeah, I mean, really interesting. Some of it kind of confirmed some of what the mushroom was telling me, for instance. So I think because it's going into your body and it's looking around for what's out of balance,
Mm-hmm.
depending on what that is for you, will depend on kind of your initial experience.
Mm-hmm.
So I found that if people, and again, you may not know this, but like, for instance, if you've got a lot of heavy metals in your body that need to be detoxed, um, Amanita is a great detoxer. It's really a heavy duty detoxer, but it's a detox. So you may have, I've heard from some people since then that are like, I either felt like nothing was happening the first couple of weeks, or that maybe I was having some heavier physical responses that other people weren't having, and I wasn't sure, but I'm glad I stuck with it, because after a couple of weeks, then I started having these other experiences. And I think my sense is, because again, there's so few studies on Amanita, that
Right.
there's a lot we just don't know. And so we're just like citizen scientists, right? Like experimenting and figuring it out. But that is kind of my sense, is like, maybe if somebody needed to have more of a detox to begin with, or maybe it was like, you just need to sleep. There are some people who are like, I feel like I'm missing out because I'm not getting all the amazing dreams that a lot of people are getting. And then kind of as the time went on, they said like, I didn't realize how starved I was for sleep. And so
Right.
you realize like the mushroom was helping, and like you don't need to be journeying while you sleep. You physically need to sleep. And
Right.
so we're going to help you do that. And so yeah, it's just like so different. But that's my sense, is that the mushroom is going in and it's kind of it's like a
Finding what's,
triage, right?
yeah.
So like, what's most important, what's number one, that's where we're going to go first. But that's kind of good in the other hand, because you don't have to know. And you may not even be fully conscious of what it might be working on in the background, which is, I think, why some people will say, well, it's been 2 weeks and nothing's happening. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
it's doing something, it's working, but it's just not, it hasn't risen to the level of where you're able to notice maybe some of these other like really fascinating or interesting things. It's
And
doing some physical work on you.
so many people have traumas that haven't been addressed, or they have a lot of anxiety. So just in my own practice, like I see that. So it's like it brings it up to the surface, I imagine, to be healed or examined. And then I think it's such a better choice for anxiety versus pills that numb, you know? So it's like I was trying to direct my friend to try it, but she was a little bit nervous. But I'm just like, it could really, if it could help, like why not? Like it might really help with that. So I didn't know
It
if you saw
really,
with
one of the
anxiety.
things it is known for is really helping with that, fight or flight reaction, and really helping with your nervous system. So I think I think people who are looking for assistance with that will probably, really find that they're having more dramatic results with Amanita. And that's what's when you're in a group, it's really hard not to compare yourself, right? When you're hearing
Mhm.
people just like, well, I want what that person's having, but you need something different, And
Right.
so, but I do find that people who are really in a very activated kind of nervous system state, Amanita is really like soothing and calming on that. So yeah, I think you're right. Like that's as opposed to, um, a pharmaceutical type of a
Yeah.
response.
Effect.
And I think that it's the real intention, like we're talking about, like once it's in your system and it's working with you, like this is not something that you have to take every day for ever for the rest of your life. It's the intention really is that you work with it and get familiar with it. And my experience over the past year is that I will work with it for a few weeks, or over the summer it was for a few months. And they tell me like, okay, like it's time for a break now, and then I go months without it. And
Right.
so
Yeah.
it really the intention is not to be dosing yourself with it
Relying
forever.
on it always. Yeah.
Mhm. That
That's
it's
true.
helping you heal. It's not just, putting a band-aid on something.
Right, right. And then if you need it again, it'll come up in your head and you'll know. And I really love that
Exactly.
you instruct people about body pendulum or like, muscle testing to listen to what they're being told, you
Yeah.
know. It's really cool and empowering. So you're what are you doing, an open house or like an open call or something like that next week? What
Yeah, so I'm just
looking at?
I'm gonna host an open house on Zoom because I think again it's like people just have a lot of questions about or nervousness about trying it or what it might do or not do, or can they do this, can they do that, and so I'm just gonna host a little open house on Zoom, talk a little bit more of the generalities about what the mushroom is, what it does, some of the things we've talked about here, and then just open it up to any questions that anybody has. And so that's on November 16th. It's
Okay,
Wednesday evening at 5 p.m. Mountain Time.
right. And then you start up with the first call on December 1st.
Exactly.
So
Yeah, and you want to be able to get put your order in for your mushrooms and get them. And the person that I recommend is pretty quick at,
efficient. Yeah.
yeah. Like you should get them within, less than a
Yeah.
week, but I'm just,
Yeah, yeah. You don't want to,
heads
I mean, you
up.
could sign up the first day, but you won't have your supplies. So sign up in advance so you can get all the information on what you need before the first call.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm just happy to like share this information with other people. So thanks for sitting and talking and explaining it to others. And I'll put this episode out a little earlier. So if anybody wants to join in on your thing, and otherwise I'm sure they could find more information on your website, or is it on your website, or do they have to like sign up for a newsletter list to get information?
It is. I was trying to figure out the most expedient way to get people the Zoom link for the open house without having to like sign up for something differently. But yeah, just join my email list if you haven't, because I'll definitely send it out that way.
Mhm.
And but the information, if you just go to my website, which is followinghawks.com, and go to the work with me page, all the information about the Amanita experience is there, along with the date and time for the open house.
Okay, awesome. And I'll put that in the show notes and all that good stuff. So, all right. Well, thanks, Amy.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me, and
Yeah,
thanks for
sure.
sharing your experiences too.
Yeah, no problem. We'll see you.